Okay, it's now 10:01. We're going to call the Policy and Governance meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. All three districts are present. The notice of meeting was properly posted on November 8th, 2024. We'll begin with number 1, which is the approval of minutes.
Motion approved.
Have a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 2 is the discussion and possible action regarding the dates and times of the 2025 regular scheduled meetings. Is this what is attached? Okay, good. This is what I need to sign. Okay.
Yeah, so I looked at, we've got meetings for this body as well as our next 2 meetings. We're approving schedules for those as well. I did notice on October 14th, this meeting is scheduled for 10 a.m. and so is infrastructure. And then PBA Advisory would be 10:05 on that day, so we may want to move this one to 9:55. That way we've got all 3 scheduled and none of them are scheduled at the same time. October 14th. Well, I mean, just a different time than 10 o'clock because we got 10 o'clock and 10:05 on the other 2 meetings. So, yeah. Yeah, so I'll move approval of the meeting schedule for calendar year 2025 with the one exception that the time for the October 14th, 2025 meeting be 9:55 a.m., but in the same room. Okay. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good catch, Cody. Thank you.
And I apologize, I did not notice that until like 5 minutes before the meeting. I would have let you know ahead of time.
Do you want to print a new one of these and I can come by and print it or sign it? Okay. Number 3 is discussion and possible action regarding updating and approval of the job descriptions of the financial administrator for BOCC. And so Karen Kent, we received copies on Sunday to review, but I believe that there's been additional changes, so she is bringing those up, and so I will need a motion to receive her new documents.
I think we need to do some more tweaking on them. After looking after them again today, and I hate first coming here and work on them, they not be exactly what we want.
So Karen was working on some updated language that District 1 had requested, and we just got some wires crossed on the language, and the language that she has right now needs to be tweaked if it's the District 1 recommended. I mean, if you guys want to roll with it, that's fine. But what we had asked her to do was to compile the recommended language that we would like to see, and some wires got crossed. So what I would like to do if possible, at the end of this meeting, is maybe recess this meeting until sometime tomorrow, or Thursday, whatever works, but really, really fast. It won't take much time because we already have the language that we want. It's just getting it into that particular document for, for the financial, position. So
Okay.
Recess.
We can,
we'll cover that
Okay.
at the end of the
we'll
meeting.
return to
Okay.
number 3.
All
Thank
right.
you. Oh, yes, same thing with 4.
No,
4, we're good.
4, we're good as far as I don't know what you guys wanted as far as language on job description, but we had worked on update the language that District 1 would like. We sent that to HR, and we didn't get wires crossed on that one. So that one is pretty good to go as far as we're concerned. Now, if others want to make any adjustments or do something completely different, I get it. That's just kind of what we saw as we were looking at the position.
Get a motion to receive document.
I'll move to receive. Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Karen, can you point out any changes that may be on this job description versus what was originally presented to Ms. Morton?
The one of them, I don't have that with me. I should have brought it just.
I don't have it either. I'm sorry. I would have.
That's okay. It's who they report to.
Okay.
That changed. We made the title a grant writer. I know there was some data about grant administrator versus grant writer. So we're suggesting grant writer on that. The other part of it changed was if you go to the second page, the minimum requirements. We cleaned that up. The other requirements, we're trying to make that consistent.
Which was one of the things that got missed on the other one. We wanted these to mirror each other on that, and so we need to update that.
The other thing was the dress code. We kind of simplified that as well. It's time for the HR to go through all the job descriptions and update as things have changed in a lot of the departments, and they just need to be updated. It's probably been about 4 or 5 years since we've gone through that anymore.
Only thing I
Okay.
don't see, and I don't know if we necessarily have to list it in the job description itself. I would heed to your recommendation. But there was a portion where it talks about, the importance of attending local workshops and online training available. And I know that Nikki had.
That's on there.
Oh, it's on there. I just read it, but I know that Nikki had come to us in regards to wanting to be part of some associations and attend some outside conferences and training. Is that something we budgeted or will budget?
Well,
for
we
this
we
next-
talked about that internally, and we can always do more than what's in here and approve something, in addition to what's in the job description. District 1's concern about including that in here now is setting expectation of what is going to be able to occur and what's not. And right now, we're just having one person in the position of shepherding all the grants. Our thought was that we need to make sure that that person is here in the building, 8 to 5, to make sure that, because it's not just our departments, it's all the officials and everything. Now, once we're, hopefully at one point able to have more folks working in grant aspects for the county in that office, then I think we would definitely look at, some different things. But right now, it's just, if you only have one and they're out and gone, I mean, it's kind of like our offices, right? I mean, if we're gonna be out on travel, like you and Miles you got to make sure one of you are there, and same thing with, our office and your office. We got to make sure that somebody's there to cover that. And right now, with only having one person, there's nobody else to fill in and cover that. So that's why we have that here. But we could always one-off approve stuff, but it's about making sure that the expectation, everything is clear in the document.
Any other questions?
Karen is right, though. After going through these, we need to look at a lot of job descriptions and clean up language and make some modifications as we go.
Nikki, do you have any questions? I know you haven't seen this. Okay.
Making decisions. You guys have not included me in this at all. So I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Okay. Yeah, this is what, we had talked about this a long time ago about, updating and making sure that when we transitioned that piece into BOCC from, it started in purchasing and then it went to the clerk's office under purchasing. And then when we pulled it here, we pulled it so that we could continue doing it. And then we would, since we were now going to be responsible for it as BOCC, take a look and see what BOCC
might go
wanted,
forward.
right? And we did have Nikki send us a list of things that she does, that she's been doing since she's been here. So, I mean, she has been included in the process as far as letting us know what job duties are being performed. She had sent a couple of drafts of some documents and stuff. And so, while we didn't address it with her as we were looking at that and then modifying it down to this, we took all of that stuff into consideration as we were looking at this. So this is our recommendation for the grant writer position. The essential duties and responsibilities, the FLSA status, it would be a non-exempt position in our viewpoint, looking at the position and everything that's involved with it. And then like Karen said, we did kind of clean up some of the minimum requirements section.
And then and just for clarification, reports to policy and governance and Board of County Commissioners, rather than one department, which we discussed at the last policy.
Correct. And then it does, we did put in here timekeeping. It would be the director of HR or designee. We thought it was important to put or designee in there because the board at some point may change who they want that person to report to. And that way we don't have to go back in and change the job description immediately upon, if the board decided they wanted that position to report to somebody else for timekeeping. So.
Any other questions, Paul?
Nope. And just as a preview for the financial one, a lot of this stuff, like on the back, now the minimum requirements are a little bit different, but it kind of mirrors it a little, but the other requirements, all of that stuff will mirror this. The job title will be different, but the reports to FLSA status, we have that one as a non-exempt as well. And the reporting to the HR director or designee. So just kind of as a precursor to what we were looking at on that other position.
Okay. I know a big change that is different from when Nikki was first hired in Chantel's office 2 years ago. I think it's 2 years ago. That the title was grant administrator. So the thought behind changing it to grant writer is just more general in regards to just thinking through wanting her to focus on grants here internally, and then as our needs change or possibly additional services in regards to grant writing, especially as in the future when we take on Accenture's roles and responsibilities and reporting, then there could be an opportunity for advancement or
Most definitely.
most
Yeah.
definitely.
I
Okay.
think that you know, but
or promotion.
right now we only have one slot in there doing grant work, whether, you know, whether it's a grant writer, grant administrator, grants, whatever. We have one person in there doing that. And the District 1 opinion as of right now, Joe's focus that he thinks this position should be on is absolutely what you said, internal grants for BOCC departments and elected officials. And, you know, with only having one person, we want to make sure that they're not overwhelmed and overworked, and that they're able to handle the flow of work that's going to come in from the county. Now, in the future, as the program grows, and we hope it does, I mean, that's why, you know, District 1 had pushed for this position in the first place. We would hope and expect that in the future that we would get big enough that we're going to need more folks in that department. And then once we get more people in there, of course, we're going to have to look at, you know, having an administrator that administrators the whole thing, and, you know, manages the people and all of that. But right now, we're just having one person. We just felt like this was a good start for BOCC as having a grants office, if you will. This is a good kickoff start position for a grant writer, and then as we grow, we can add as necessary.
The main thing, I think it's very important for us all three to have a clear understanding, since Nikki reports to policy and governance, as well as BOCC, in regards to what her roles and responsibilities look like and how we can help support her in regards to any questions. So that way we're all on the same page. And so that's why this was important, and also why Lisa at one point said we really need to identify a clear roles and responsibilities, since there has been so many changes in regards to where this position has reported to. So I do appreciate your time in reviewing this, and us taking time in order to figure out what this looks like, and an understanding for us as all three districts moving forward. Next steps definitely would be to sit down with Nikki and have a clear understanding of what this documents, she hasn't had a chance yet to look at it, pertains to. And so we will absolutely do that. And any other questions?
None for me.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
You already did motion to accept that.
We have to motion to approve the job description.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I'll motion to approve the job description. Since District 1 prepared the document, I want to make sure that it's clear that we're not dictating the process here. So I appreciate you making the motion. I'd appreciate it if Jessica's in favor of this document to second it. I will, of course, vote in favor of it, since this is what our language is. But I just want us, for it to be a clear message that we're all on the same page. We're not trying to shove anything down anywhere. This was just, you know, we looked at it. This was, you know, what we thought would be an appropriate first step. And so.
I will motion to second, and very much am excited to see Nikki continue to thrive and grow, and to see
Absolutely.
this job be able to, and position to be able to expand. So I will make motion for approval. Second for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 5 is
And
discussion.
Karen, you'll get with Nikki and go over that. Thank you.
We'll do that.
Number 5 is discussion possible action regarding selection of the November 2024 BOCC Employees of the Month.
We did not have any nominations for this month.
That's getting more and more disappointing month to month.
It is. I try to send out interesting reminders of it and attach the nomination sheet to it. Like for October, I put leaves on there. It's time to recognize. I don't know if everybody's just so busy that they can't think of somebody that deserves to be of the month. But it is sparse. This is the second month we haven't had any nominations recently.
And what remind me of the incentive that they get
They
when
get $100 on their next paycheck.
Okay,
So I would like to remind our department heads of the importance that this board and BOCC thinks that having employees of the month is, otherwise we wouldn't have the program. And I would encourage them to start participating as much as possible. Some departments I understand are smaller and they've nominated folks and had employees of the month. And so there's, they just don't really have a whole lot of ability to nominate somebody else, especially when you're getting towards the end of the year. I get that, but we've got some departments that are large enough that that they can look, and it nothing precludes, if somebody's doing outstanding work and does something incredible one month and they get employee of the month, there's nothing that says they can't get that honor again in the year. I mean, if they're consistently, performing, in an outstanding manner, I mean, recognizing them more than once, it's not something that we just have to, make sure that, it's passed out, only once a year to somebody. I mean, if they deserve it more than once, then nominate them more than once and then give us the opportunity to look at it and see if we think it's deserving.
And
So,
if they are chosen employee of the year, they get $200 extra out of everybody that's pooled. It's a little incentive.
thank you for continuing to communicate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay, number 6 is discussion possible action regarding policies, processes, procedures, and status report pertaining to the oversight and administration of Oklahoma County's ARPA funding allocation.
Good morning. I'm going to grab the clicker. It's a little bit long today, but it's because it's going over each of the agenda items that you guys will take motions on after this. So making sure that we can get through any questions during the report, and then we can take our motions on each of the agenda items as we get to it. So we'll start with our general overview, and I did want to highlight which of the agenda items are going to kind of be relevant to each of the sections we're talking about. So of course, this is our very general. We're going over our program report. And then 2 of the other items that we'll be talking about today is the remaining funds that are to obligate in the 1415 account. And then of course, the funds that are remaining to obligate in the Local Assistance Tribal Contingency Fund. So we can discuss those more as we get into their agenda items, unless there are any initial top comments before we jump into our fund overview. Awesome. Then we will start talking about our basic fund overview. So from the last time we were here, that project approved number has changed. It was at 127 and grew to 129. So that was thanks to the 2 D3 projects that have come across the BOCC. And then we have also done a fully expended amount. That number has increased from 61 to 73. So that's because of your new subrecipients that have already received funds. They've gone through the contracting process. They went through the DA. They've been signed by both themselves and by the BOCC, and then have received their funds as well. The unauthorized community funds has not changed, but I know that there are plans from the District 1 office on how they would like to use those. And then for the total authorized amount, that is at 154.6. And then your obligation is your next number that has increased. It had been at 98.1, and now it is at 101.2. After some of the conversation we're going to have later on today about MOUs, we're going to see that number increase for obligation, but we'll touch on that in a section after. And then lastly, from expended, we've gone from 77.2 to 79, so making a lot of great progress. This just kind of gives you the bird eye view of visually where all of the projects are at. So you can see we've got a substantial amount of projects obligated at 74%, and then doing a really good job with getting things expended as well. This always is just a good breakdown of so you know where each of the funds went based on their expenditure categories. So you can see that a substantial amount of funding has gone into y'all's public health EC code, which is really exciting. That's really great for the community and for the county as a whole. And then of course you have some larger public sector capacity projects that have been ongoing as well. So you can see from the different colors, your yellow is what has been expended. Your blue is what is obligated in each of those categories, and then that golden color is what has been authorized in total for those categories. So these are the things that we continue to report to Treasury, but going along really well, but wanted to give you just those updates of what those look like. Same concept here. This is the breakdown per department. So you can see quite a bit of funds had gone into the BOCC. We have a substantial amount that had gone towards the sheriff's office, but then of course also a very good amount of about 14 million going towards the community, which is really exciting. That will jump us into work plan unless anybody has questions about current fund status. All right. So as we talk about the next 2 months, the final things we want to take care of is making sure we get all of those final authorizations and obligations taken care of. As you all are very well aware, we've got to meet that deadline by the end of this year. So December 31st of this year, we do have to have all funds obligated. So again, we will talk a little bit about those MOUs in a second to get us to part of that point. But I also wanted to make sure that everybody is aware as we look at our calendar, how quickly the days start to disappear from us. So you'll see we are already here on the 12th. We've got a week and a half or so before ourselves and you guys go on a little bit of a vacation and spend time with family for Thanksgiving. We come back and then it's almost about only 3 weeks until we get into Christmas time. So just making sure everyone has a really good visual understanding of where we're at and making the last moments of getting everything finalized, which is why we're going to talk about the 1415 account and the LATCF funds today. We will continue moving forward with subrecipient contracting. We are super close. We've only got about 5 left that need to go through the contracting process as of right now. And then as always, our general site visits and desk reviews, and we will hold another compliance webinar in December so that everybody is prepared for reporting in January. This again just gives you that upcoming reporting timeline. So the next report we will submit, we just did the one that was due in October. We'll do the one in January on the 31st it will be due, which is again why we will do that subrecipient compliance webinar in December. Mostly important for your newer subs, the older subs. This is kind of, very used to something for them, but making sure everybody else is up to date. The next items that we're going to talk about are the ones on the agenda that we have touched on related to mitigation strategy. So this is not new. You guys have seen this before, but just kind of looking to make a more formal decision on these projects as we're moving forward. So as you all know that there has been some potential concern with timeline for our 5th floor project, for the annex elevators, and then for the behavioral and mental health facility. And we all want to see these projects come to fruition. And so we are thinking that the best step forward for the county would be to look at these options and make a decision moving forward on how they would like to proceed, particularly with option A. What you would be doing would be working with whomever out of the infrastructure staff. It could be Stacy, it could be Keith, it could be the owner's rep, it could be the CAMR. We are not sure on our side. That would be a decision that would come from the infrastructure committee on who this information would come from, but kind of providing an attestation saying, yes, this project is going to be completed by December 31st of 2026. And on top of that, providing a detailed project schedule that would highlight milestones. That way you would know if a project is behind schedule or if it's ahead of schedule. And if it were to be behind schedule based on those outlined milestones, what is the mitigation strategy to move forward? In some cases, that may be overtime and things like that, but just making sure that there is a plan in place to get those projects completed by the timeline. So that's option A. Looking at option B, which you could adopt both potentially, is that if the construction on these projects has not begun by February 14th, which is the second Friday in February, that this board would be making the motion to go ahead and reallocate those remaining funds to your current subrecipients. And the way that this would look is it would be an amendment to the current subrecipient contracts. It wouldn't be for the new scope of work. So say the 5th floor project for some reason doesn't move forward, you don't then take those funds and give it to another organization to provide that service. It would be for the service that was already being provided by that subrecipient's original contract. You would only be amending that original contract. And then of course you have the option to take no action either direction as well.
Danny, before we move on from that, when do you need us to give you a determination on these mitigation strategies?
Well, we'd
I
love
know
to have a
quick-
vote today.
Go back to that slide. 'Cause
Well, yeah, go back, but let me just finish this real quick. My thought is, if you guys are willing, about recessing this meeting for that financial one, what I would like you to do is meet with Mr. White and have a discussion with him about the mitigation strategies, because while you're our expert on the ARPA guidelines and getting money out the door, my time spent with Mr. White, I feel very confident in his expertise on moving projects forward and what can and what can't be accomplished. And so, for instance, if we do option B, the February 14th, I'd want to know from him, is that a doable date, or does that need to be more like April 1st or January 15th, right? So I would like some input from him on some of these mitigation strategies before we pick one. That way we have our compliance piece, which is you guys, and our overseer of the project getting together, a meeting of the minds, and then coming back to us with kind of a joint recommendation.
Yeah, that was gonna be my, question and recommendation, either for, Mr. White to join us, in discussion, or, possibly have further discussion on that when we recess and then come back and make a decision whether it's A or B or both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
After today's meeting and after infrastructure, we can connect on setting a time to meet.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with that, Danielle. Because just to use as one example, I know we're gonna discuss this in infrastructure, but there seems to be a little bit of disconnect, and I'll use just one example. On the fifth floor social distancing, you're saying that there's, that possibly the completion of the project wouldn't occur until December 2026, yet in Bill's update says February 2026. Big difference.
Yes.
So that's why I think.
And then having an understanding of how we can extend beyond that deadline of December 2026, because I thought that was a hard,
It is a hard deadline. There
Mhm.
is no continuing with ARPA funds past the 2026 deadline. Even by saying like the project is substantially complete or providing a letter in support in that way, the funds must be expended and the phase of that project that was funded with those dollars has to be completed.
right?
And that's where I think giving them adequate time to discuss, and they may not agree.
Good point.
At the end of the day, they may disagree, but I want to know what both of their opinions are, whether it's one opinion or 9 different opinions, whatever it is. I think it would be helpful for us to hear from both of them, not in a rushed manner.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't really, expect Bill to get up here right now and speak to this, but, if we get back together tomorrow or Thursday or Friday, whatever the schedule is, if you can meet with him ahead of time so you guys can have a meeting of the minds, not necessarily a complete agreement,
Sure.
but whatever, hopefully, it is that, but whatever you guys both think, you can come back and let us know so we can make as informed of a decision as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great plan. We'll definitely connect. I'll run quickly over just this update since we will do further connecting. This is what we were referring to. If you go with that option B, the way that you're able to amend your contracts. So in general, you're not able to re-obligate the additional funds. That's why we're saying you couldn't take it from the fifth floor and create a new fifth floor project. But you can amend a contract that was already incurred by the end of this year and increase those. So say for a food bank or for prescriptions and things like that, you could then fund those services that were already in those agreements. So we've talked a little bit about MOUs as we've been going through this, and again, trying to make sure that we meet that very important obligation deadline. So what we are going to do is we have attached the MOU agreements that we have created for both of these projects. So this would be in order to obligate your nearly $39 million in the behavioral health facility, and then the little bit over $2 million in your medical claims. I am going to brush over this slide because it was just going to be providing direction to us to work with infrastructure to get the necessary documents to attach to the MOU that outline what is going to be the expenditures for the behavioral care center. But I've already gotten that from Flintco, so when we go to that item, I will have y'all receive those. But we've already all worked together and it's going great. And this just outlines how we came up with the MOU structure. So this comes directly from the Department of Treasury, and it tells you what has to be in these agreements in order for it to fulfill those obligations. So as you can see, it does have to have one of the requirements from that column A, so imposing the condition of use of funds, the governing of the provision of funds from one agency and another, and then the procurement of goods and services. We have all 3 of those built into the agreement. And then, of course, it does have the pieces that are all required related to the specific requirements, which is why it was really important for us to get this documentation from Flintco. And then, of course, having both parties sign, so that will occur after you guys approve it. We'll have the DA review it, and then we will have both the BOCC, and then it would be the engineering department for the behavioral health facility, and it would be the benefits department for the medical claims. And then we do have the non-disclaiming binding effect as well. So we incorporated all of those pieces, but of course wanted to make sure you guys didn't have any feedback before sending it over to the DA's office and then continuing those steps forward.
I don't have any questions. Am I sending that on your behalf?
Yes,
Okay. Just wanna make
after
sure I'm
y'all
watching
approve
for
it,
it.
yes. Thank you. I will remind you.
Just want to make sure. My
Talk-
responsibilities are.
Talking a little bit more about MOUs, this one is not obligating any additional funding. These are already taken care of. These are your older subrecipients from that first round. The original language in their agreements only extended through 2024. As you can see here, we had that clause one of the agreement, and it said ends on December 31st of 2024. We are only amending that language to say ends on December 31st of 2026. All of the agreements that are attached to today's agenda are already signed by your subrecipients. They have already gone through the process with the DA, and they are on BOCC for tomorrow, so BOCC can sign, and that will go ahead and extend their time period that they are able to expend their funds. And that aligns with the updated guidelines from Treasury. Not an issue on our end, just something administrative we had to continue moving forward with. The next few agenda items are related to project closures. We are going to go ahead and defer the first one when we get to it. Just simply, I have not received the closeout form, but it's okay. There's no return of funds on that project. It was fully expended, so even when we close it out, there's no additional action in rolling funds back into the 1415 account, whereas our two social services projects do have a little bit of funds that are rolling back. So your first one was for your homeless navigator, and with the conclusion of that department, there will be almost $44,000 that rolls back into the 1415 account. And then for the homeless service trailer, of course, that is going to have the trailer donated to another organization, but the remaining funds that was in that project for laundry services will roll back into the 1415 account as well, and that's that $15,000 number. This just gives you an update of what the steps are. So we're at P&G now. We'll go ahead and close those out. And then once that's done, we'll be able to push it forward to BOCC. Lastly, that takes us to our subrecipients. So this is just accounting for your new subrecipients. You had 46 total new projects. You have 13 upcoming subrecipient contracts on BOCC. Those were ones that were undergoing DA review, but were already signed by your subrecipients. We are only awaiting information from 4 of the contracts to be finalized. 26 of them have been signed by both parties. 43 out of 46 of the projects have already been set up as vendors with your AP department, and 13 of them have already received funds. So I won't read these out to you, but it gives you an idea of these 3 slides are all your individuals that are fully contracted, taken care of, will be receiving funds if they have not already. These are your upcoming subrecipients. All of the process has been taken care of except for getting signature from BOCC. So they're finalizing DA review, and then they will be on the BOCC agenda for signatures, and then they will receive their funds as well. These are our couple of stragglers, but all still doing really well. As I noted, there's only 4 that we're waiting on additional information from because 3 of them have their agreements. We're just waiting for them to be signed. So as soon as they're signed, we can send them over to Jessica. She gets them to the DA. They follow that traditional process. 2 of the subrecipients were relatively new. They were our D3 subrecipients, the Peaceful Family Solutions and Field and Future Foundation. So we don't see those as being late necessarily because they were awarded later in time. So we're still collecting their information, but they're not behind schedule. Making some small amendments on the Blue Jay agreement. He is going to actually be a beneficiary versus a subrecipient, which is not typically the norm, but their project is very specific and they will end up being a beneficiary. So we're making a few final tweaks on that one. And then we are just waiting a little bit on our CZU program to provide their remaining information. There will be an agenda item, I believe it's the last one on the agenda today, on if you all would like to set a hard deadline for when it comes to receiving information from our subrecipients, particularly ones that aren't new, and saying that they would need to have the information to us no later than the end of this week, or they could be at risk of having their funds reauthorized to other projects. So that will be the only other agenda item we have, and that walks us through it.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Yes, thank you.
So no action on number 6. Number 7 is the discussion of possible action to obligate ARPA funds remaining of the 1415 account. And remind me, Danielle, what is that total amount?
So it's just under 230,000. It's 229,962.53 cents. And that is not including your LATCF. That is an additional 100,000. And this 229 number is including your rollback from social services. We've already accounted for those numbers coming back into the 1415 account.
Okay. Go ahead.
So we had some thoughts in our office and whether we utilize the remaining funds in the 1415 or the LATCF funds. I'd leave that to Danielle to determine which one would be where it would fall better. I think it probably would fall both places, but and then as along with that, we have about $31,000 left in District 1, and we would be interested in using those dollars in the same manner. And that is one of the things that we lost when the legislature took the ability of counties to provide for the indigent away was our pharmacy was serving as a pharmacy of last resort. So when we had Medicaid expansion, it took a lot of the prescriptions that we were having to fill. It took that burden off of the county because they were able to get those elsewhere. But there's still folks that fall through the cracks. And from talking to Christy and those that were at social services providing those services, those people are the ones that, I mean, like I said, it was the last resort, so they don't have a place to get those. With us keeping the pharmacy on the employee side, what we would like to do is fund the indigent prescriptions, the availability, and those were, Christy had said that it's around $26,000 a year, so say 30,000. So we need that for 2 years, calendar year 25 and calendar year 26. So that'd be 60,000 there. And then another thing that we were doing through our pharmacy program was HAU would utilize our pharmacy to make bulk purchases for their participating pharmacies that don't have the ability to purchase the meds on their own. And what the structure was set up, they would fundraise and get $35,000 a year, and then they would make the purchase. We would make the purchases, and then they would reimburse us. Well, what we would like to do so that we could continue providing that service for the next 2 calendar years to give them more time to find another avenue. They're working on other avenues, but it's going to take a while for them to get all that stuff ironed out to be able to get the prescriptions that we got. The $35,000 a year in prescriptions with our buying power that we got, they had estimated that it was a 7-to-1 return. So if they had to go get those drugs elsewhere instead of from the county, it would have been $250,000 to $300,000 for them to make those purchases. So it was a huge benefit to them to be able to utilize our purchasing ability, and then they were just reimbursing us. So what we were thinking was to be able to continue that, allocating $70,000 in an ARPA project for HAU to get them through the next 2 calendar years, and then they can address it moving forward. So that would be 130,000 between those two, which the LATCF funds are 100,000. District 1 has 30,000, $31,000 left that we can allocate. So we could take care of both of those needs with those 2 funding sources.
And what did you say the total amount was? 200? What?
So in the 1415 account, there's $229,962.53. That does not include your 100,000 that is for the LATCF. So in total, 329.
Yeah, that's the next agenda item. But I wanted to bring it up on this agenda item in case we wanted to do it there instead of the other one. But
Stacy, I just want to make sure we're doing all of our due diligence. Stacy, will you join us? And with Bill White being here, I know our office has been very cautious about utilizing the funds or to the full amount. in regards to allocating those just to make sure that we're covering any unforeseen, change orders or, increases in cost of the construction of our infrastructure projects. And I know that you were really wanting to put those funds towards possibly the elevator in case any other additional expenses came up. Where are you at on that?
Well, you have authorized some change order money for the elevators already. It's
Mhm.
not the full 10%, but I would hate to think that we'd hit 10%. We really haven't ever in our projects. So I do have some money there. Do I have enough? I don't have that crystal ball. The other, tomorrow's a big day because we open bids on the 5th floor. We're going to know tomorrow morning what the cost of the 5th floor is. That's going to be a huge number for you to understand. And then the only other thing I can think of is on the behavioral health. There's kind of three components to that. There's Flint Co's, build the building and the site. There's FF&E, furniture, fixture, and equipment, which the beds and the furniture, that sort of thing is accounted for and in the budget. But there's a third component. There's the vendor, which we don't even have a vendor pick. We won't have a vendor pick for another year who's going to run that facility. But they're going to want their own nurse call stations, their own swipe card system. We're going to hardwire it for all that in the Flintco bid, but we'll let the vendor pick what they want to install once they're selected. That'll be a few $100,000 that we will install from June of 26 to December of 26, so that we're fully operational in December. But having a few $100,000 for those components would be very helpful when we get there. That's what I know today, on these projects that I don't want anybody to forget about or get blindsided by.
Well, I will just say from talking to Joe, the stance of District 1 right now is what's allocated for the projects is what's gonna, in our mind, now it takes 2 votes, so we could be outvoted, but the amount that's been allocated is the maximum, and if we come under, then we can move money into, different areas, but not increasing budgets. And I would think something like what Stacy just mentioned, if a vendor is wanting specific accommodations for their services in there, that can be a part of the contract, and they can be paid for by the vendor to put in certain things. So I mean, I think we're way down the road on something like that. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
Since, if it's possible, because it is the next agenda item, since we were bringing up the LATCF funds, those funds we can use towards anything except for lobbying, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, while I love the idea of possibly utilizing them in regards to what she feels is the best course in regards to medications, I also want to make sure that court services is funded. And so I know we're going to have important conversations today. So that might be something else that we should discuss utilizing those funds for. So maybe we recess these discussions until Thursday or whenever we discuss everything else, so that way we can have a little bit further thought. And I know court services, we're really wanting a sustainability plan, but if it's just this year to determine, and I'm throwing it out there, just to determine, what that looks like moving forward. I just don't want them to be short what they need in order to provide service.
Yeah, my issue with that goes back to what I said a minute ago about, I think the District 1 plan will probably be the same, in that area as well, holding firm on dollars that are currently available. The issue with allocating these dollars for something like that is, I mean, if we found other dollars, that's one thing, but using one-time money to fund a program that is going to need to stay and need that additional funding, and we have to come up with that funding somewhere else at a later date, gets dangerous, because then we don't have those funds available to be able to take care of that. So I think we would probably be more in the camp of let's figure out how we handle that situation long-term, other than a Band-Aid that may make the long-term solution even more difficult.
And I haven't been part of those BET conversations, but I just want to make sure, because it is such a vital program to the county, that we were able to fund it in its entirety. So just a thought that I had.
Then based on your thinking of where District One would like those to go, would those need to be allocated to the 14-15 or to?
As far as we're concerned, it doesn't really matter where that conglomeration of $130,000 comes from. District One has $31,000, and we're willing to put that towards those projects. So that leaves $100,000. Whether we utilize the 200 and change in the 14-15 account, or whether we utilize the 100,000 out of the LATCF funds, it really doesn't matter that much to us. I would say, since it just kind of works out, the 100 and the 30, I would think that it would be maybe just more efficient just to utilize the LACTF funds and the District 1 funds. But if there is something else that, we wanted to do that we couldn't necessarily do under the ARPA, but we did here, I mean, we're fine using the 14-15 account as well. It really doesn't make a whole lot of difference to us. We just would like to see that funded for the next 2 calendar years.
And it is an eligible use of funds, so it can come out of either bucket. To Cody's point, it is simple math by doing the 100, but also to Cody's point, because the LATCF follows more of the revenue replacement, if there was something that came up that wouldn't have been outright an eligible use, you could use that 100,000 towards that. But it doesn't matter to us either what bucket it comes out of, either being completely eligible.
But at this point, we haven't identified any other, things that are outside of that for the LATCF. And if we left the others in that 14-15 account, it could be available for projects that are already in the 14-15 account.
Yeah, we could build them in, yeah.
And again, we've just always had the thought of making sure that we're able to complete projects and that there's not anything that infrastructure wise that we fall short on. And so.
Well, I think our goal is the same, that we complete the projects, but that may mean that there's project choices that need to be changed and modified through the process. If you have a cost escalation here, then maybe you need to do some cost de-escalation in other areas, spend less in other areas, or maybe completely do away with certain things in certain projects and maybe fund those later down the road if you have cost escalations in certain areas of projects. But I would think that most all of our projects, we planned on getting them done with a certain amount of funds at that particular level. And if the costs do come up, then, we just may have to, scale that project back a little bit and still complete the project, but just maybe not have, everything included.
All the fixtures and furnishings.
Or whatever. I mean,
So
whatever
what-
makes sense to.
So we're talking about 130,000 for the indigent pharmacy, correct?
Yeah, for
And
2
then-
years, for an opportunity to fund 2 years of meds for the folks that this is the last resort for them to be able to get the medications.
And then the remainder is what you're wanting to possibly do as reimbursement. So of the 329 basically that we have with the LATCF.
I'm sorry.
So we have 229 plus another 100,000. So we have 329 and 962 plus your 31,000. So the remainder of those funds, where would we allocate those towards? You're suggesting towards?
I've not made a suggestion
okay.
for the,
I didn't know.
just for ease of conversation, the 14-15 is the 200 and something thousand. The LACTF is the 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
So if we use that 100,000 and then the District 1 funds, the other amounts that are currently available in the 14-15, we're open to suggestions.
Suggestions of where
That's,
they go,
yeah.
possibly into elevators in case we have infrastructure costs. Okay.
So would you like to table item number 7 and then go ahead and obligate number 8 with,
No, we're talking about ARPA yet. I don't know if we've determined what the LATCF is. Which one? Are you wanting to use the LATCF funds? I thought we're talking about 14, 15. Doesn't matter, it doesn't matter to you either way.
It doesn't matter to us either way. I mean, it's a dollar's a dollar, regardless of which account it comes out of, because it's eligible to come out of either. My thought was just for efficiency, since we need 100 and there's 100 in that one, and if we were utilizing the other funds for the elevators, even though I said that District 1 is we've allocated a certain amount, the one problem with the elevators, I will give Stacy some leeway on that piece, that it took us a while to get those contracts out to them. So that may cause a delay in when they can get those completed. So we may have to pay for overtime and some extra on those. But if we did go that route or something else, those projects are already in 14-15. So we wouldn't need to move money from LACTF up into 14-15 to take care of something like that. So it would just be more efficient, I would think, for us to utilize the LATCF 100,000 for the indigent prescriptions, along with the District 1 money, and then figure out what we want to do on the 14-15.
Is that how that's grouped? Is it all in the same account under ARPA?
Yeah, the 14-15 account has the 229, as Cody said. The LATCF came in a separate tranche from the federal government, and it was 2 different tranches, one of 50 and then another of 50. I believe the way Micah originally coded them, it is separated from, yeah. And something to think about, if you use the LATCF funds, it's one less agenda item you have to think about next time. But again, we don't care.
So it is all in the same, it wouldn't be easier just to keep it all within the 14-15?
Well, the LATCF's not in the 14-15.
Okay, so it's a completely separate. So I guess my question is if we fund the elevators with that 100,000 and put that towards there. I was just trying to make sure it was a clean, there wasn't gonna have to be any crazy transfers.
Well,
So-
if we were gonna utilize the 100,000 in the LATCF for a project that's already approved and funded through 14-15,
Well, I was thinking the remainder of the 14-15 amount that would be in there.
the remainder of the 14-15 money, that 200 and something thousand, yeah, there wouldn't
Yeah, we
be,
would need
to
keep
go
it.
to the elevators or something like that,
It'd be easier.
it'd be easier.
Yeah.
That was why
just
I
wanna
was
make
saying it'd
sure.
be more efficient to do the I
TCF.
keep having to look back because I forget
know,
what
it's
the.
hard to remember it.
Local Assistance Tribal
Yeah.
Contingency Fund. You received it because you have tribes within your community.
I'm fine with that as long as we do allocate some towards the elevators, just in case we have any additional expenses that arise.
So I think we'll want to go to agenda item 8, then maybe table or defer this one, go to 8, and we'll move that 100,000 be for the indigent pharmacy going through the HAU agreement, and then we will include the D3 remaining funds to that as well.
I'll make a recommendation on item 8 that we utilize the LATCF dollars at the disposal of Oklahoma County in the amount of $100,000 to the indigent pharmacy program.
second.
And then that Accenture would, whatever document we need to have drafted for our benefits department, since that's where it's through, that you guys would handle all of that internal. So that's my
Absolutely.
motion.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor? Aye.
All right.
And then back to number 7.
And just to be clear, that 100,000, and then whenever District 1 is able to do our agenda item for the 30, it'll put it all into that indigent that we can use for the county indigent as well as the HAU piece.
Yeah, we
And
can add
we
that
already
on.
have an HAU agreement. We had talked to Danielle. She can modify that one and bring that HAU agreement back with the modification.
Yes, it won't be on for tomorrow's BOCC, waiting to see how conversations were handled, but we can have it on the one after for next week.
I was just making sure that that we were all clear that that's what the motion. Okay.
Okay. And then number 7 for the remainder of those funds, correct?
Right, the 229 that is still remaining in 1415. But there may not be a will at this moment to obligate based on unclarity on some of your projects. And we may have, if we are deferring or adjourning and then coming back, we may have some additional conversations as we meet with infrastructure that we would be better able to find out what that 229 could do when it comes to elevators and things like that.
And especially since we'll have the bids come in from
Mhm.
the 5th floor, so can we just recess that one to whatever date and time we decide? Okay. And then we can make a decision. Okay, number 9 is discussion and possible action of proposal and mitigation strategies of timeline risk for ARPA project. This is the one that we're,
Yes, so for
Defer-
9, 10, and 11, I think you would want to take them all together and we would move them to that next agenda
Recess.
after we have met with the team.
do we need to make a motion for that, Sharon, or
No.
can we just?
We'll just
No.
wait on those
Okay.
items.
Okay. 13? Discussion, 12, okay, 12. Discussion and possible action regarding obligated funds of ARPA project 10130, which is the BOCC Behavioral Health Services Facility through the memorandum of understanding in the amount not to exceed $38,380.
Yes, so as we were saying, this will
38,960,380.
There's a period there where there should be a comma. I see why you
It
did
was
that.
confusing.
So as we have been talking about, this will go ahead and obligate those remaining funds. So this is not including, when you think about the breakdown, there was that 4.5 million that was used for the land purchase. That was out of revenue replacement. It's already been reported to Treasury as both obligated and expended, so it doesn't have to go into this agreement amount. And then you have a small fee that's already come out for your owner's rep. So those pieces are not accounted for since they've already been expended. So it's just that remaining obligation amount, which is that 38. We had just received the Flint Co. and got their approval to attach this to the MOU, but we had it after the deadline to submit. So if we can do a motion to receive, this will end up being attached to the MOU that we send to the DA for review. So this breaks down your cost at the behavioral care facility so that it meets that scope of work requirement and the provision of funds requirement.
Motion to receive as well as forward the document to the DA's office for legal consideration and approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Danielle.
This one's easier because it doesn't need an attachment, but we'll need to go to the DA's office still.
For number 13.
13, yes. What's already on
And
the
the
agenda
amount-
is all that's needed.
Yeah, motion to approve forwarding this agenda item to the DA's office for legal consideration.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
14.
We can go ahead and defer this one because I don't have the closeout form yet from the department. So we'll wait.
Do we need to make a
Do you know
motion?
when you're gonna,
We will have it by the next P&G. There's no funds returning on this project, so it's just a matter of closing it in the portal, but there's nothing that needs to roll back to 14-15. They fully expended.
okay.
Presiding judge, are you here for P&G or infrastructure?
Infrastructure.
Okay, I just want to make sure I address you in case you had any questions.
So 15 and 16 are just, they're both closeouts.
15 is a closeout. I think 16 is the MOU. The other closeout
You're
got
right,
added
you're right,
later.
you're right. So I'll move approval of closeout of the item number 15, the social services homeless trailer. It has JJC social services.
Yeah,
so that's,
I
but-
noted, yeah.
So motion to close that project out.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then your 16 through 22 are your MOUs for changing the date from 2024 to 2026.
Motion to amend the MOUs, items 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 22.
Second to all.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And those have been added to the agenda for BOCC.
Yes, ma'am.
Questions from the commissioners?
And I don't want to walk over Nikki because I know she has an agenda item, but if y'all want to go ahead and do 25 to close out the Homeless Service Navigator project, and then if you wanted to set a deadline for 26, then you would be done talking to me.
Okay, we can do that. Oh, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Jessica.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so number 25. To close that one out. Have a motion?
Motion to close out the project, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
Yep. Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. And then 26.
26 would just be if you would like to set a deadline for your subrecipients that are maybe taking a little bit longer to get their information over to us. I believe original contracts went out, or original information collection went out in September, so they've had a little bit of time. So if anybody wanted to look at setting a deadline in case we wanted to go ahead and get some of those funds allocated to new projects, our original recommendation on this would be by the end of this week, which is the 15th, I believe.
So, well, this is a District 1 project, so, yeah, I appreciate that, though. I spoken to Joe, this project, we've had plenty of time here. We've got to get moving. We've got a deadline coming up of the end of December. So I think giving a deadline of the end of this week, 5 p.m. on Friday, I think is more than adequate. I still I'm curious, if it's taken this long, my concern is if it's taken this long to get the documents ahead of funding, or I want to make sure you're comfortable that they're going to be able to get the timely documents that we need after that for all reporting purposes and everything. So, but I will move that we set a deadline for the projects that are not new of this Friday. What would that be?
I believe it's the 15th.
The 15th at 5 p.m. that they have all of the information to you, and any, that it all be squared away. So that would probably mean that stuff needs to get to you before then, because there may be changes that need to be made. All of those changes, everything needs to be finalized and done by 5 p.m. on Friday.
Yep.
That's my motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So we'll go back. Let me find out where we were at
Is it 23, I think?
in regards to the burial. Okay.
Yeah.
And I just got an email from Ms. Bahana, so that's what I was trying to read.
Yeah, we're on 23, I believe.
Okay. So on 23 is the discussion possible action regarding cremation and burial services. And so we have been discussing this in regards to different ways that we can handle this service. We have an RFP that has gone out. Thank you, Chantel and Paul, for working hard on that. The bids are open, and remind me, Chantel, of when we anticipate those closing for opening and tabulation. 20th.
Responses are due on the 20th.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I wasn't 100% sure. So the 20th. The concern is that I know I have received a lot of calls. I don't know if,
We have as well.
and so right now we currently have 6 unclaimed bodies that are within funeral homes that have been there one over 3 weeks. And so that is a long time for them to be held. And so I talked to Dane, and he also invited Christine here, has done a fantastic job. And I have to tell you, Christine, we have had nothing but rave reviews about the service that you have provided for many years. All the funeral homes absolutely love you and miss you. And so I just wanted to make sure I called attention to that. But would you mind joining us up here on the microphone, Dane and Christine? Um, a thought that I had was to, just because we have some time that we still need, of course, for those bids to come in and for us to be able to tabulate and review those and then call another meeting to discuss. I didn't know if it was possible, if it was, if this committee would be in favor of Christine helping us in the interim in regards to just getting the 6 bodies that are unclaimed processed, and the families, be able to have closures, and those funeral homes, who are being really gracious and patient with us right now, have the time in order to get that
I definitely
underway.
would be if Christine is amenable to that.
And could you tell us just a little bit about your role and what all this entails? Because I have learned so much from just hearing from all of the funeral directors in regards to how important this service is. And so I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to share from your experience, and just wanted to hear from you if you were willing to help us just for a time period.
I've discussed it with Dane. As long as he is acceptable as my current supervisor, that's fine. I think what the next few weeks, each case is going to be a little different. I mean, all the cases you've got to do some research, help locate next of kin, things like that. But I don't see a hard stop. Even when social services closed, there was not a hard stop. There were still things that needed to be done, but I had to stop. But I'm not real sure what you're asking me.
Well, in regards to the 6 unclaimed bodies that we have and the medical reports, this is them that I have. I don't know if you guys have any additional to this, helping us get through until we can open that RFP. We're wanting to look at outsourcing this, and so whomever ends up, if we go the route of a bid, they would then take over those responsibilities of what this would look like, if that's what our
Well-
recommendation is to the BOCC.
I would have some questions. Absolutely, I'll help. There's certain things like if they're unclaimed bodies, somebody has to sign off as next of kin. Before that was Christy Marshall with Social Services as the director, who would sign off as the next of kin. We'll have to have somebody to do that.
And from what I understand, and just asking questions in regards to who signs off, typically you had signed off, Christine Marshall had signed off as next to kin, but really it's the county taking responsibility
Correct.
for that unclaimed body. And from what I understand, the the funeral home cannot get a permit in order to cremate until the county has signed off.
Correct.
And so I don't know if that needs to be the chairman's office who signs off on signatures on everything else, or what that recommendation would be, but that was just my first thought.
The question that I have is what I think I brought up either at the last meeting or the one before. I'm not clear that we have the statutory authority to do that any longer. With the change in law in the state repealed the title of that section, and while they didn't repeal this specific section of, or piece of the section, when they struck the title, I just want to make sure that we have the legal authority to do it, because there's lots of stuff that we've talked about over the last few months that we had to stop doing that was providing vital needed resources to the community on a daily basis, and we can't do those so any longer because of the acts of the legislature. I just want to make sure that we have statutory authority to continue in this pursuit.
And I just shared with her the email I got from Ms. Mahana, because I had asked a little bit further question on that, so we'll let Lisa
Yes,
speak
I
to that.
believe Aaron Etherington, the chief of the legal division, had already issued an opinion on this and done everything. I think your question is what impact does the repeal of the title to the legislation have? Because the intent of the legislature was to leave this particular service untouched. So the DA's opinion is going, I think what Jessica just showed me was Vicky Bahena, the district attorney's opinion is that it is a service that we can still provide, because I think the intent of the legislature was to leave that unattached. If there was an unintentional or a something that happened with the repeal of the actual title, that's going to be an illegal opinion. It's probably going to be one that will have to go higher than us. But we're looking at legislative intent, and we're going to say because they left that purposely unintentional, just didn't repeal. If they wanted to repeal everything, they would have just repealed the title and repealed everything. The fact that they chose to piecemeal it out the way that they did indicates there was legislative intent to leave it intact, and that's what we were going to be basing ours off of. But you do raise a very valid legal question as to what the actual intent is, and maybe that's something that you go and ask for a higher opinion, maybe the Attorney General. But at this time, we're going to read it as an intent to have that service remain. And at that point, it becomes whether or not you want to provide that services or not, because, obviously, I think you have a legal argument that the repeal of the title repealed the entire statute. But the way that they did it indicates that I think that it simply was something that was unintentional to repeal the title when they left everything else.
So
Some
the
of the things
So
intact.
the legislature's intent was that the counties help people when they've passed away, but not help them while they're still alive.
I cannot say that. All I can say is that they purposely repealed certain provisions and specific subsections of that title, and they left others untouched, and that's what we're going off of.
And I think my question before Joe speaks is that, I mean, it states in the DA opinion that we have the authority, and then it's just whether or not we want to do it. I guess my question was, are we required? Are we required to do it?
I am not going to piecemeal what Vicky Bahena said in her email. If she said that it's your choice to do that, then I'm going to stick with my boss's opinion on that.
But we don't know if we're required or not, because that was what
I
asked
will
her.
read her. I'm just saying, if she says it's a choice, take the language to heart of what she says. I'm not going to piecemeal it.
Well, in the opinion that I received, that was the question was, are we required? And it still says that the county will just have to determine if it's a policy and whether or not we do it or not. So I guess it's the same response.
When did
but
you receive that opinion?
Karen Kent had, or in the safety department had sent out the opinion to all of the districts. That opinion was from 5/28, and then I had contacted Ms. Bahena just to ask that same question. Was I see that we have the authority, but it's a policy decision on how we go about doing or handling such service. I just wanted to know if we're required to do
Okay,
this service.
so to Mr. Compton's question regarding the way the legislature repealed those, Commissioner Bloomert and I, we worked extremely hard to try to salvage social services and the ability to help people while they were living, as Cody mentioned. In looking at that legislation, as I recall, the way the statutory construction was, the very first section designated the county commissioners as the overseers. I believe it said one time overseers of the poor. I think it was later changed to overseers of the indigent. That initial section was repealed. The section that you all are now talking about, I believe, makes reference to something that should be the duties of the overseers of the indigent or the poor.
Duties of the county as
service.
overseers.
And so I think Mr. Compton's question is valid, notwithstanding what the DA has said, and it may require an additional look as well. So if that's what it takes, I'll ask that question.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, that was at the heart of it, was that what was repealed was that the the language that the county is the overseers of the indigent. And then the section that allows for us to provide the burial and cremation services, I believe the language says something like counties as the overseer of the indigent,
Right.
blah, 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 blah.
If you,
Well, if you've
felt-
repealed that you're no longer the overseers of, then can you even continue doing?
that would be another question also when you're talking about the indigent pharmacy question as well. So you have to, if you're gonna go there and say the title is repealed completely, the title is
Oh,
repealed completely.
the pharmacy's different because there was
It's
legislation.
indigent.
The legislation changed a couple years ago, that allowed counties to perform services that may not be given direct authorization, but if they are within the purview and purposes of federal funds that you received, that you can do those services. That's how we're able to continue on with the respite care services that we're doing
Okay.
is because of a separate statute. If you remember when Mr. Prater was here, there were lots of things that Mr. Prater said we couldn't do. Yes, CARES Act says that counties can do this with this money, but Mr. Prater said that's great, but it's a two-pronged test. You also have to have specific statutory authority to do these things from the state. Well, to fix that, the legislature passed legislation that said if you don't have the statutory authority, but you have the authority from the federal government with the monies that you got, you get a pass here
Okay.
and you can do it. That's how we would be contemplating doing the pharmacy for the next 2 years.
That makes sense to me because of that piece right there, because once again, everything has to have statutory authority for this. And so, like I said, I am not here to say that your point is not well taken with regard to that. But what I feel like I have in front of me is I have a repealed title and I have piecemeal repealed statutes, which means the statutory intent. I can't tell you right now from looking at what this legislature did with this piece, what their actual statutory intent was. So that's why I'm saying, as a matter of caution, we're saying we have a title repeal and we have certain statutes repealed, and then we have one that's some that were particularly left completely alone and left standing. And I think that is something this next legislative session, probably the counties collectively need to have the legislature clarify. Because otherwise, once again, you're at this juncture where do you provide the services, do you not? And I think that the opinion has left it to the point where in this gray area, I think that it is going to be up to you, because I think that the statutory construction could probably fall either way, the way that the legislature has done it this last session.
No,
And I think if the counties didn't do it, that it's not that there's not recourse. It would shift, just like the services that the counties were providing before that we can no longer provide. Those responsibilities shift back to the state and to the cities and municipalities that those folks are in. It would be the same way on cremation and burial. If counties aren't doing that, it shifts to the state. So it's not that it won't be filled, it's just that that service would be filled by somebody other than the county.
In the years past, have we had more requests than we have had budgeted, or where do we usually fall within the budget? The budget versus the need of the cremation and burial services.
Are you asking the
Or-
6 that you've got, is that average?
No, like on average, year over year. Do
There's
we
about-
use the entire budget? I mean, do we end up having to turn people away? Like where?
No, nobody's ever turned away.
Okay. So we've always fallen within or under budget of those the need of the community?
Correct.
Okay. I just think it's interesting when I was having conversations with the funeral directors, them saying that there was nothing that they could do with the unclaimed bodies until we signed off on them. And so that made me question in regards to not being able to get a permit to continue on with, the cremation or the burial without the county's consent. So I didn't know. That was news to me, so I didn't know if you had any other feedback.
That would be
on that.
news to me as well. I would think that there would.
Yeah. So I asked
I
them-
know that it was pointed out to me at one point by the deputy district attorney for Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office. There was an issue in 2022 that the Board of County Commissioners got the letter that if there was a delay, I mean, it's so important to get done, that if there's a delay, it's a misdemeanor offense for delaying. I mean, we've just always had to do it.
Mhm. Yeah, that was my question to them, is if we waited, could they just go ahead and, process and move forward with, the unclaimed bodies that we have currently? And they said no, that they would just have to hold on to them for months until we made a decision
I
or
do
were
know
able
that-
to sign off.
I do know that in legislation, there is a section for penalty that if somebody does take over for whoever's supposed to be doing it, they could be charged 3 times the amount of what it costs to get it taken care of. And that's how important it is, which was what is pointed out to me by the assistant district attorney.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just think there's been a landscape shift on who actually has the responsibility, who should have the responsibility. I mean, I wish we weren't having these discussions because we were still doing everything. I just want to make sure, because we've done our due diligence, to make sure that we're following the law as it relates to helping the living, that we're following the law as it relates to this as well. So.
So I would still think it's important for us to take care of the bodies with dignity that they have, that are
Are
being
any of
held.
these, were any of these in the, how do I say this? Did any of the deaths occur prior to November 1?
So
Because
of all the medical examiner
we had
report,
statutory authority up until November 1, so I think we could take care of any, for sure, we
Mhm.
could take care of any that were there
so
prior
October
to November 1.
18th is the October 18th, October 19th, and then
Lisa, is that a safe
November 2nd,
statement?
November 4th, and I feel like, and then these two others were family members that weren't able to pay, and so I guess they just turned it over to being unclaimed. Is that correct?
That
Does the family member still get the ashes, the remains back if they turn it over to unclaimed?
generally, if it's depending on if they assign the attachment A or B, which is A is I don't want anything to do with it, then they stay away. B though is the family knows, but is either unresponsive or unable to do anything. I think would probably be a funeral home policy. I don't want the cremain. We don't claim them as a county. It's really up to the funeral homes.
So
Thank you for all your work on this. This is heavy. I mean, it's last week was heavy with the
Well, I'd
calls,
also want to
so
throw
I
in there
appreciate
too
you doing this.
is that the software and all of those things are now no longer available to me. Is that something that we could get back?
Well, and in talking to the funeral homes, they said that they had done the due diligence in regards to seeing if there was any financial ability or if there was any next of kin. So they said that they've already signed off that was done. And so it's just a matter of us signing these, and
In my
so that way they
position,
can move forward.
in my position, I would always double check that. There's things that they don't always have access to. And as a county employee, I've been able to utilize things like DHS, where I've found life insurance policies. Veterans, they'd probably already figure out about the veterans stuff. The assessor's office, make sure there's no property.
And so I don't know if that's where we're going above and beyond what the responsibility of the county is.
I think there's, what we were doing before was providing the service for the indigent. So I think the county does have a responsibility to do its due diligence to make sure that it is operating in that arena, that it's not just somebody that's just choosing not to, that it is for the indigent, because that's what the statutory provision is. So I appreciate all the hard work you put into that.
before.
I would be, yeah, before.
Before the statute
I would
change.
be amicable, because I've not seen the email from Ms. Behenna and had a chance to look at it. I think right now I would be comfortable moving forward with an individual from the county handling what we've done in the past, the way we've done it in the past, for the deaths that occurred prior to November 1, when we may have lost the statutory authority. And or if we didn't lose it completely, did it shift from a may to a shall? I don't know what that situation is, but it sounds like we've got numerous of them. We got numerous of them that were in that timeline. So I think we could take care of those and then try to still figure out what we're going to do moving forward for situations that have occurred and that will occur after November 1.
So, so that's 2 out of the 6 that I have received personally. Moving forward, what is your recommendation of what we tell the funeral homes as they continue to call us?
I don't have a recommendation yet. Like I said, I've not
It's on
seen
hold.
Ms. Behenna's email. I would want to look at that. And
Do we want to defer this discussion to Thursday as well? So we have more time to discuss it? Or do you think we need more time and discuss further in December?
well,
I just-
I think we should
I just
go
don't know
ahead
what we're
and
gonna do with
I
those
think we should
bodies.
take action on the ones that happened before November 1. I think we should get that taken care of ASAP, because we were doing that. There was the expectation that we were doing that. We had the statutory authority to do that. I think we should follow through with that. The question becomes after November 1. So I do think that we should go ahead and get the ball in motion to take care of the ones that occurred prior to November 1, for 2 reasons. First of all, those are older situations that need to be taken care of, and we got the statutory authority and we get it taken care of. Secondly, if it is determined by BOCC ultimately that we are going to continue doing that, we've already started that process through, so we don't have to start over, and it would be faster to make the decision. Do we want to continue doing it the way we did it in the interim for those last few at the end of October? Or do we want to, award on the RFP? Or do we want to just not do it at all? And it should be a quick process at that point, because if we're going to continue doing it in-house, we've already started that process, and it's just a formalization of we're going to continue doing it like that. Or we go to the RFP, which is just whoever's doing the RFP should be able to step in immediately. So it would take care of the situation fast if we chose to go that route. Or if we chose not to do it at all, that's a fast decision. So I think it would be expedient for us to move forward with the ones that occurred in mid to late October.
The only
Before
question
November
is who
1st.
from the county will sign off for those 2.
I believe it would be Christine.
I've always signed off as a witness. It was Christy, the Director of Social Services, that signed off as next of kin.
Dane, did you ever imagine as an IT director that you would?
Make Dane sign it.
No, Dane, I don't want to put you out on the spot there.
No, that's
I
fine.
think we could have the chairman's office sign
We'd be happy to sign.
Yeah, I actually don't mind if you guys wanted to do that. The only thing I'll have to say on this whole matter is if you want Christine to do these last 2 or whatever number it turns out, I do think it's only fair that there should be some level of compensation for her until the new company or whatever way you decide to go comes about. I think that's only fair because it's not part of her job description today with us to do any of this stuff.
Did we find her position out of social service?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I agree if we continue doing that long term, but for the 2 that are currently sitting out there, I don't know what we would do on that.
feel like that's an executive session discussion, but
I mean, I
Chrissy,
think
what-
if there's time in the day to do these and you can shift some of the responsibilities, I think that to process the two, I think would be, I just think that we could do it as is. If the decision was gonna be for handling them after November 1 and all of them that occur, then I definitely think that discussion needs to occur. And it may be a discussion that it's not somebody that's in IT doing IT stuff. It's somebody else, somewhere else doing other non-IT stuff. So
and really, what does that entail? I mean, from what I understand from the medical examiner, that they've filled out the forms and done the due diligence. It's just a matter of looking up some additional background and then
Well,
signing it.
It's doing your due diligence in safeguarding county funds. There's a lot of times where, again, things are found that funeral homes don't have access to or don't know about. A lot of times it is done, and you just double check, and then obviously data entry, keeping the information, doing the research, having your director sign off on it, getting the information back to the funeral home, making sure the medical or the ME forms and the authorizations are correct for an unclaimed. For claimed, it's along the same lines. Are the ones that you have claimed or unclaimed?
So when I asked the other counties, because I saw the other county commissioners for Logan County and Potawatomi County, how they handled it, they said that usually the funeral home provided those. I mean, they did the research in the background. And so, and I believe that that is what we're maybe in that RFP expecting for.
Yes.
Uh, so, I mean, like Cody said, we want you to handle it the way that you've done in the past. So that way we've done our due diligence up until November 1st. But I was just trying to get a better understanding of what's required.
The big part of it is trust but verify.
yeah, I think if we go the RFP route, that it's gonna be important that we put that verification on
Agree.
our RFP on our vendor and not just rely on the
Funeral home.
the funeral home.
Yeah.
Were these in the pipeline before social services closed?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not to my knowledge.
No, the only one, there was one body that was found in October, but it wasn't reported until November 7th.
Is that from the medical examiner's office?
Let's see, I've got an email here. The body was found on October 30th. And then the police brought it to the funeral home. And so she reported it to us on November 7th. I don't have for that one the medical. Mary, let me see. I don't have that one for that one specifically in regards to the medical examiner's report. So, okay. So, any other further discussion?
Nope. So is your office then gonna sign off on the
We'll
two
sign
from
off as
October?
the chairman, and then I'll work with you in order to get you this information and information from the funeral home after this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then I guess I'll contact the funeral homes and let them know that at this time it's on hold and there's nothing that we can do for those bodies that they've are holding until we hear back from the RFP and make a final determination.
Which hopefully should be,
After-
we should have a determination week after next.
The 20th. Okay. Any other further discussion on 23? Thank you, Christine and Dane. Number 24 is a report from Nikki, and I don't see her present, so do we want to defer that one
She was here.
to Thursday?
I thought she wanted to go over these processes and.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. So,
Yeah, I guess we can.
we'll defer it to Thursday. And then we need to discuss, when we're in the date and time.
Yeah.
So Sharon, you had suggested 10 a.m. because there was nothing else at that time.
Hang on. Let me look at my calendar.
I'm looking as well. Are you available Paul, at 10 a.m. on Thursday?
That's. If we could do 10:30, I'm actually out that day, but I can be here at night at 10:30 to do it.
But do you want to do it another day?
No, nope, that's fine.
I have a meeting at 11, but it should be pretty quick if we did it at 10:30
Yeah, that's fine with me.
or 1:30.
I would rather not do it at 1:30 because I'm,
Okay.
like I said, I'm supposed to be out that day, but.
Okay, so we'll plan for, I guess we need a motion.
Well, do we want to do new business or citizens participation
Go
first?
Okay. Any citizen participation? Seeing none. Board comments?
None.
None. Any new business?
I will motion that we recess until 10:30 a.m. Thursday, November the 14th in this room. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. That's not fair. You get to get out of here now? We have to sit for 2 more meetings. That's all I do.
All you have to do is.
No. Teams won. It's not. Yes. I believe so, yeah. Yes, yeah. Yeah. It's a prayer. It's like, is he on my side? Yes, he was. Yeah.
So I actually was completely out of commission this week. Always thought I my life. You know, honestly. Oh. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. This is it, Mike. Okay. Everybody ready? Are we all ready? I don't know about. Then I'm gonna go right to item number 8. Long, okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the infrastructure committee meeting. All 3 districts are present. The notice was properly posted on November 8th, 2024. The first item is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve? I'll move to approve. Okay, I'll move to approve if you'll second, Cody. All right, all those that's been moved and second, all those in favor say aye. All right, now I'd like to skip down to item number 8 and discuss Discussion possible action regarding entering into a contract with GH2 for courtroom build out on the second floor of JJC. Keith? Great, thank you.
GH2 has been selected. The scope of work has been identified. We need to enter into an agreement with them for the amount listed. I don't recall exactly that figure, but we need to act on this in order to move forward in an expeditious manner at JJC.
Any questions? Judge, would you like to weigh in on this at all? And thank you for coming. Thank you for your patience.
Absolutely. No, I understand. And yes, I agree with Keith Monroe that we do need to go ahead with the contract. There are some, rough drafts that we've seen in terms of the design. Those things will change once a contract is entered. And I know there's been some concern with regard to parking and other issues, but my statement last time that we met with GH2 was that I wanted the seating for the public in each courtroom to be minimized, that the well be bigger. So those, when you see some of this, just know that there is still a lot of work in progress, and that I don't anticipate that at any one time that there would be more than 125 people that would be on a busy day occupying what would be now the footprint for those 3 courtrooms, as well as any space for the jury assembly room. So, there's still a lot of work to be done. So I would say, know that this rough draft does not reflect, I think, what will be ultimately the occupancy, in particular because I specifically requested at the last gathering that the number of benches be reduced and the well of the courtrooms be enlarged, because that's where you have more space. That's where the judge, clerk, bailiff, and the attorneys will be sitting. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'd like, first of all, just thank you for all your work that you've done on this and the work that I anticipate you'll continue on making this project. Any questions or comments?
No, absolutely. Well, one question. Echo what he said. I really do appreciate it. You guys have worked really hard on this. I guess I could turn that on. The other gathering spot would be the area that we had for jury assembly. Are you considering that space as well? Because that's something that may drive up that occupancy.
Yes. So when I was, what we'd be looking at on a day without juries. So then you'd have essentially, 12 people in terms of the court staff. You may have another 6 with regard to the court clerk. So then you're at 18. Then let's go ahead and throw, 5 or 6 for attorneys, litigants, things like that rotate in and out. So, you're looking at on days without, without jury trials, then you'd have staff present, not public, but staff present, probably 25 to 30. Then, but you do always have the public coming in because they're going to be participating in the probate guardianship. So you'd have a flow of that as well. But routinely, if you look at our courtrooms, they're not heavily occupied in terms of those benches. And then you have the jury terms. And as I mentioned, my plan is to move the probate guardianship adoption docket out there. That does not require jurors to be there. However, we're building 2 of those courtrooms to have jury boxes, because who knows, in the future, we may have juries out there, because we're building for 50 years. We're not building for 5. And so if we get into a situation, then when we have juries, then, if it's a petit jury, it's 6 plus a couple of alternates, and we have 2 boxes. If it's a full jury, then we have 13. So, you're still looking at something that's easily within the accommodation of that space.
Well, it makes sense to do it to where it can be modified later if needed. But maybe what we could do, if it's a occupancy issue for parking and whatnot, our fire marshal could maybe rate it as its intended purpose is now, then in the future, if we wanted to shift, and these are kind of questions, I'm not making statements here because we may not be able to do this, but my thought would be that if we did need to make a modification in the future to where you had something out there other than those dockets that did require juries, then we would have to change the occupancy load through our fire marshal, which is sitting at the end of the table here. We'd have to go through all that process and then make those changes at that point to parking or whatever before we made those modifications. But as we sit now with what you're sending over there, there's no juries required for that. So the juries that you're going to have over there are the folks that are currently having to go over there anyway right now. So it's not going to increase the flow of people into that building more than what it currently has because you're going to have the same juries over there. Is that a fair
I
statement?
think that's a fair statement, but I think even if we were to take it into account and say, let's say that all of a sudden, a new presiding comes in, and says, well, I'm going to shift to some, courtrooms or some dockets out there to require a jury. I think even then, we still be within the capacity. And partly because until we enter into a contract that we can't ask GH2 to do what I asked them to do, which was reduce the seating for the public in each courtroom, move that bench or move that bar where you have fewer seats for the public, greater space for the well, because that's where all the activity takes place. But until we get to that point, then we can't really finalize that. But I still don't anticipate there would be a huge burden on the parking in the worst case scenario even.
Paul, do you have any questions or comments?
Nope.
All right, the chair will entertain a motion if anyone wants to make one.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, and I would say you'd put a cap of $499,250,000 on that. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, whatever it
Yeah.
is. I mean, that's all
Great.
included in the current budget allocation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Judge. All right, item number 2.
Well, if you
Sorry.
would, since the judge is still here,
Uh-huh.
we've got, oh no, that's on PBA. There's a trailing agenda item, never mind, that's related to it.
Thank you. All right, item number 2, discussion and possible action regarding ARPA projects list requested by the board. Stacy, do you have anything at this point?
Maybe one thing on the behavioral health, I alluded to it in the last meeting. You guys approved the MOU for what was left of that original $40 million, which is about 38 and some change. This project's gonna come in at 45 or so. We do have that original $10 million that the board set aside. We spent some on the land, we spent some on the existing jail, but the money we spent on the existing jail, my understanding, the budget board's giving that back to us for this project. It's just not available until December.
Okay.
And I'll put those two numbers together and we'll enter into a guaranteed max price with the contractor on December the 18th, whatever money we have. Now that money has to cover the cost of the project, the FF&E, and then I alluded to some things the vendor will pick later on that will add to the project. So that comes after the December 31st, 2024 deadline. So money we take with us across that threshold, I think then you can move money around between projects if you need to, is my understanding. So some of that 14, 15 money you guys were thinking about, keep in mind that project, we might need a little bit of money there because it's not your requirements or my requirements, it's the state health department's requirements.
Well,
In order to get licensed, this stuff has to be purchased. You can't cut it out of the project or reduce it. It is what it is.
Stacy, you alluded, well, you didn't allude, you stated earlier that we had pulled money that was allocated for this for other things, including the HVAC project down at the jail, because we had to move on that. And then the intent was to utilize dollars that became available that the sheriff's office turned back via an ARPA project for them that made those dollars available at September supplement. Those monies were put into reserve, and they're sitting, a lot of them are sitting in the reserve account, and there's not been any allocation of those dollars. If you're talking about an allocation of additional monies, that's where those dollars, I would assume, are coming from. So if you're looking to do that in December, make sure that you have an agenda item on for BET for our December meeting, so we can have that discussion for a potential recommendation of a transfer of those funds so that it does get on the budget board meeting.
Okay, how about doing that in November even?
Well, we have BET this afternoon, so you missed the deadline. Now, if we do need to have that on for November, I'm happy to attempt to call a special BET to have specific discussion about that one item to be able to get it on budget board for the November meeting. But I just wanted to put that in your brain about needing to get that onto BET, whether it's a special meeting or are regularly scheduled in December.
And then the other reason I mentioned December is because the treasurer mentioned to me the way they collect funds for the money to actually really be there. I mean, allocate it's one thing, but for it to be there to spend, and that's about as early as they could get that money to me.
Well, but right now we would just be transferring it from, it would be a budget approval. It wouldn't be actually moved. I mean, you wouldn't have the dollars going in there, but on paper, it would go there in November or in December out of reserve. So you just move that allocation from reserve into the other account.
Very good.
Any other questions or comments?
Then,
I'll entertain a motion to approve the report, accept the report.
so moved.
All right, I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item number 3.
There's no changes on 3.
Okay, no report. Item number 4, capital improvements list. Any changes or report?
No changes.
All right, no report. Item number 5.
Move approval.
Second.
Sorry,
Aye.
all right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. For the, thank you for catching that on moving the P&G. So we,
Aye.
yeah, thank you. Item number 6, discussion possible action regarding owner's representative portion of ARPA. Welcome.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or whatever it might be. It's close. First, we'll start with the elevators. Kone has ordered the elevators. We're waiting on final manufacturing delivery dates. There has been some talk about the annex being at risk. Please note that we have received a proposal from Kone in the worst case scenario to be sure that we get complete by 12/26. So they realize the timelines. They're willing to do what it takes. We have that number in-house. I don't remember exactly what it is, but they, until we get the manufacturing date, which we're supposed to have in the next 2 or 3 weeks as our meeting last week, then we can accommodate the schedule if we need to. So right now, the elevators, as far as I'm concerned, are on schedule and moving forward. The at-risk one would be the last elevator in annex, and we have received a proposal in case we need it. So the mitigation or the questions about that, I think, are in place right now if we go to that extreme. Court clerk, as stated, they bid tomorrow. We'll review the bids. We had 10 bidders show up at the pre-bid, so we're excited about that. Hopefully we'll have a lot of participation. Also, as we've stated before, you guys gave us the latitude under selection process for the government or their sub-recipient to have the latitude to negotiate with the low bidder if we have funding problems. Clerk books, I understand.
So just on this one, abatement is completed, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
They're I think they're finalizing the sprayed insulation right now. It was to be done Friday, but I did not check it late in the day. So the project is where it needs to be.
Great, thank you.
Clerk's books, the only comment I would make is along with the first floor annex construction, facilities, our independent contractors doing air samples on first and second floor in case there's any disturbance of the existing asbestos or
Do
problems with.
do you or Stacy know, or Nick, did they secure new contractors for the books project?
I have not seen that. I don't know.
Chantel probably has that information.
Do you have the balance of the contractors? I saw the carpet. That's the only one I've seen. What books? Well, there's no, not funding, the actual contracts. You've written all the POs for the project.
For the northwest corner where you used to office to build that out.
Yeah, you're just asking what POs we have issued? I just want to make sure I understand the question.
the-
We have carpet.
I think Charles was asking, there was contemplation of a particular vendor doing the work, and then there was indication that a different vendor was gonna do the work. I think he's wanting to know if that
Did they
vendor's.
secure new contractors or not? Because they pulled the old one off the job, is my understanding.
We have carpet with floor designs. James Phillips is building a temporary wall. We have OKC Roof doing the ceiling tile, ceiling grid, paint. I know that lighting is being looked at with multiple departments. Several vendors. We have a moving vendor that's been secured and doing work currently. I'm not sure.
Cool, no, that's great. No, I
Okay.
just want, because I know
That answered your question. Okay.
yesterday was the start off of the season of no air, that we could have the no air. So I know that we're on this, headed toward this date of, I think, January 30th, had all the
Yes,
books
yes.
completely moved and everything. So that's a good update. Thank you, Chantel. Yeah.
Drainage
Thank you.
culvert project still had a little hit with the weather, but we're still looking at the end of December, 1st of January to be complete. Let's see what else we got here. Behavioral, should be noted that the contract, as I understand, is written and being reviewed by Flintco. We're working on the GMP. In my discussions with them yesterday, they indicated in November all those items should be available to Stacy. So we'll be in good shape on that, including the GMP. The existing jail HVAC, we're working on the 7th floor and progressing as scheduled. The loading dock, thank you for the change order, is complete, and we'll get that door installed. Once I have that date on installation, I'll get it to you.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill?
Motion to receive report. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded, or I'll second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, item 8, we've already discussed. Item number 9, update regarding first floor
Number
project.
7.
I'm sorry, thank you.
The co-op board did
Thank
meet.
you.
I'm getting it.
Okay, thank you.
And they approved the design documents, and they recommended to go into construction documents, and the BOCC accepted that recommendation. So we're doing final construction documents on the jail portion itself. We were already doing those on the BCC. So the BCC is a couple of months ahead of the jail itself. So we're kind of in the final design throes of that. I did send you all the floor plans for the BCC, and if you'll check down in the bottom right-hand corner, you can zoom those and make the
Okay.
pictures as big as you want to. Because I know some of you are saying they're too small, you can really read them. There is a zoom feature, and you can look at each one of those rooms, see if it suits you, see if there's something you think's missing or you have questions about. And now's the time, because we will have a guaranteed maximum price on that before the month's out.
Great. Any questions for Stacy? If not, I'll move to receive that report.
Second.
And Did you second it? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This is the part where I say we've already discussed number 8. Okay, number 9, update regarding first floor West Hall project. Anyone from the clerk's office here?
I got a text that we might want that one stricken today. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Motion to strike.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding building permits and building, for the Oklahoma County homes destroyed by the tornado. Eric, welcome.
Yeah, so we've been getting phone calls starting towards the end of last week of people who are wanting to either rebuild or repair structures that are in unincorporated Oklahoma County that have been damaged from the recent tornadoes. In the past, the Board of County Commissioners has decided to forego some of those fees, but I will say the damage was substantially less from those other events compared to this one. A large part of the unincorporated area in the southeast part of the county has been affected. We received a list from David Barnes as well as some pictures from our inspector for some of the subdivisions that have been damaged out in the southeast part of the county. Example, one of the newer ones that is in the process of almost being completed, Kalidi Landing off of Southeast 15th and Peebly Road. As an example there, I would say there's kind of two different sections of that particular subdivision. There's one where you enter in off of Peebly Road. I think there's about 10 houses that are there. Those houses are fine. The main part of Kalidi Landing, which comes in off of Southeast 15th, there was probably, I want to say 60 to 70 homes. I would say at least half of those homes are damaged to some degree or another. Just based on some of the pictures that we've seen, you're probably going to have to reconstruct the majority of those even. There's some subdivisions that are to the north and east of that one and to the south and west of Kalidi Landing as well that are older subdivisions that again are in the same predicament. And so we wanted to get your thoughts on moving forward as far as does the county, the Board of County Commissioners, want to charge fees in regards to these folks rebuilding their homes or repairing these structures. Just to kind of give you an idea of how our department works in regards to these fees. If someone, as an example, has to rebuild their home from ground up, they will submit an application to us, a building permit application with plans, site plans, everything that we require, and then we charge them a fee based on the square footage of the home that's being put back. It's 25 cents a square foot. Those fees go towards paying the employees of the Planning Commission. Marquita and myself are separate. We're paid by the general fund now. And so not only those fees go to pay those employees, but we also have to pay the state, the Oklahoma Uniform Building Code Commission. We have to give them $4 for each permit. We have to give them $4 for each inspection that is conducted by us. So a portion of those fees go to that. And then we also have to pay our inspector mileage to go out to do the inspections. The Planning Commission, as far as where we stand today on funds, we are currently in the red, not substantially, but we are currently in the red, just to kind of give you an idea of where we stand monetarily at this time. So I just wanted to get your input on how you'd like to move forward.
Yeah, Lisa, if you could help me here for a second, I want to make sure that we have this latitude. But I would think, and I could be completely wrong, but if somebody had homeowner's insurance and they have to rebuild the house, those are costs that are part of the rebuild, so that should be paid for by the insurance company. There may be people that don't have insurance or they may be underinsured. So could we take the approach that we have a hardship form that maybe somebody fills out and we can waive those fees if it's somebody that didn't have homeowner's insurance or had, was way underinsured? Otherwise, we would still charge those fees because those are gonna come back from the insurance company. And maybe we just change the process to where we don't charge them up front. We wait and let the insurance company pay for it. They may not have the funds to pay for it initially and then wait to be reimbursed because they're having to pay for other things in the intermediate time. But I would think that we wouldn't have a boon to the insurance companies and them not have to pay and reimburse for fees that are legitimate fees. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. I just don't know how we would go about the process of verifying whether insurance is in place, or they're underinsured, or they don't have any insurance at all. That's something that we never get involved with when it comes to a traditional building permit where you're not under these circumstances.
Did the builders still hold some of these homes as well, as opposed to?
Well, in Kalidi Landing, as an example, the builder or the developer may hold all those buildings. From my understanding, they are renting those homes. So now, what percentage is renter occupied and which one's owner occupied, that I can't answer. But I know a lot of those were renter occupied.
I personally think that if it's somebody that's lost their house and they don't have insurance and they're trying to just scrabble together whatever they can, we should try to do what we can to help mitigate that if we can at all. But if it's, for instance, if it were my house, it's not just internal costs that we can offset. We're actually, according to you, paying the state and other entities for this stuff. So we should be passing those costs on to the insurance companies, not necessarily on to the individual.
Detail as far as how we collect building permits. So as an example, if you have a structure that's completely destroyed and you're rebuilding from scratch, it goes back to what I stated. So the building permit itself, what we collect up front is just 25 cents a square foot. So, whatever that fee may be for what they're putting back, we're collecting for us to pay employees, so on and so on. So as you go through the inspection process of looking at the home as it's being constructed, those inspection fees are typically $55 per inspection overall. Those fees go towards the inspectors as far as getting them out there, paying them mileage to get out there and back. And we also have to pay the state $4 of each one of those inspections. So on $55, we're probably keeping approximately $50 of that for us to pay for our cost. Now, when you're dealing with other structures that may be partially damaged to where you're only going out there to do inspections, period. So let's say that the service from the house was ripped out of the wall. They've got to rebuild the service. We have to come out there to do an electrical inspection or two. You're only paying for inspection. So your cost overall is substantially less, but we still have to go out there to do the inspections. We have to pay the inspectors mileage to get out there to look at that as well. So there's less costs involved, but it goes back to what you stated. There are still costs that we incur. So,
but once again, I'm going to make the assumption that somebody has homeowners insurance on that property, whether they're living there or it's a rental property that somebody else owns, whether it's a full rebuild or something, less than a full rebuild. Insurance covers, that's part of the cost that they pay for, right?
Right. So I guess my point in doing that extra description there is one, how do we verify insurance coverage, whatever it may be? That's one question. Two, if you had somebody who built a house from scratch instead of just doing individual inspection because there's partial damage, that permit fee of 25 cents a square foot, we retain more of that than anything else. So you would have the ability to waive more of that than other areas in regards to inspection costs. I don't think there's really a lot of room to work with there as far as waiving any of those costs. So I just want to point out, if there's an area that we could give any relief on, would be just permit cost if someone was rebuilding a structure from ground up. I think there's a little bit more leeway there than if it's a structure that was partially damaged to where we're doing a few inspections to make sure that the work that's been done meets code, there's not as much wiggle room there. So I guess my question boils down to is, how do we verify insurance to whatever capacity they may or may not have? And then moving forward from that point, as far as, do you want to just on permit fees, base it on if they have insurance or not?
Well, I was mentioning more just a hardship, letter, a one-off. If you can't, then give us some documentation, let us know, and then you can take it on a case-by-case basis. But I think generally letting insurance companies off the hook for part of these expenses is, and we're still incurring it, it's not helping the person that's living out there. Now, what we may want to consider is, instead of charging those dollars all up front, unless the insurance company pays for those all up front. I don't know how that works. If the insurance company is going to pay for it up front, then I say you bill it and let them pay it up front. But if it's a reimbursement situation, or they'll pay it down the road, then you could just do a tally of those people, and they don't actually have to pay it. You charge their account, and then the insurance company is going to send a check.
So the only concern that I have from that point of view is we as a department, we don't process anything until the permit's paid for, period. So just because we've had instances where someone says they're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and we process this permit, we would never receive payment.
Yeah.
So one, we're not gonna move forward until we receive payment. So maybe in your particular scenario that you're coming up with, if someone is insured, they're gonna pay that cost, they can get reimbursed from their insurance provider. To where if you have someone who is underinsured or no insurance, maybe that's just something we look at a case-by-case basis.
Another thing is too, I mean, I understand and I feel very bad for those individuals, but there's FEMA, there's other areas of disaster relief that can fill these gaps in, that I don't think that waiving a fee, I mean, what we have here is we have a statute and it requires us to be reimbursed for the costs to provide our services. And gifting any type of services of the county is not really appropriate without any type of statutory authority. And so I would just simply caution that as much as we would like to give them the relief, this probably is not the area to do so, simply because there is FEMA for those who are uninsured or insurance companies. Rebuilds are going, all of the rebuild costs are built into that insurance, like you said, Cody, and as well as anybody that was uninsured or underinsured. FEMA and disaster relief services are provided to individuals. This is probably not an area, because like you said, Eric, this is going to require you to do stuff that, and once we start down the slippery slope of making an exception that doesn't exist in the statute here, then we're kind of buying into, if there's a disaster or a good cause or an indigent situation that we don't, then all of a sudden we have our engineering department making these judgment calls on a case-by-case fact basis when it's a licensing or a fee requirement that's statutory. And so I'm just going to give my 2 cents on that and think that maybe this is just something where I would honestly recommend, unless there's some statutory authority to allow you to do it, or you just really want to do it, to say this is probably not an example of where I would want to deviate from the statute.
Any further discussion?
Appreciate that, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you. I'll entertain a motion if anyone wants to make one. All right.
Continue business as usual?
Yeah, which I don't think requires a motion. Does it? You don't? Okay, all right. All right. Citizens' participation.
Marquita, thank you.
Thank you. You did great.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, board comments.
Well, it pains me to say this, but MIZ.
All right. Any other?
That was a
Do you
good
have
outcome.
District 3?
Ridiculous.
No comment.
All right. Yeah. Congratulations to Stacy and his Tigers. Also, was there any new business? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second. I guess I'll make the motion to get out of here.
All right. And I'll second it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Sorry, Paul, you said second. I had
Yeah.
no big deal. Motioned it, yeah. And so that clock hasn't been moved back an hour, right?
Right, that's what it is,
We have another meeting.
No,
No, we have another
one
one
more
right
right
now.
now.
PBA
Should you
Advisory.
choose to remain?
I'm gonna go straight from here to B. Okay, I'm gonna do this. Oh, man.
Okay, I'm in. Are you in?
I'm not. I don't have the option to get in.
I'm good.
Four meetings today.
I don't know, Monday.
It's because of holiday.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Are you good? I'm good.
All right.
Well, I'm in.
Okay. Call to order. PBA Advisory Committee notice of the meeting was probably posted on November 8th, 2024. All three districts are present. First item is approval of the minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded for approval of the minutes. All those in favor say aye. Item number 2, discussion possible action on ARPA project. Stacy, do you have anything?
No.
All right, refer to item number 3, discussion possible action on the dates.
Move approval.
All right, it's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor for the minutes as posted on agenda item 3?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 4, discussion possible action regarding floor plan of JC. Keith? Keith, all right. Yeah, didn't see you there.
This is, at this point, more about the funding mechanisms to fund the balance of GH2's contract. So the floor plan is merely a penciled-in concept that will be refined over the course of the next several
So
months.
no action needed on item 4, but we need to have a discussion on item 5.
Yes.
All right. All right, no action on item 4. Item 5, discussion of possible action regarding entering into a contract GH2. Keith?
I think you should do this.
Do item 9 before 5, probably?
Well, enter in a contract and then ultimately discuss how you're going to fund the balance.
Of the contract.
Yes.
Yeah, so probably need to get our
Want to go to
ducks
item
in order.
9
Yeah, if you
first?
don't
Okay,
mind.
that's fine. No, with everyone's permission, we'll go to item 9, discussion possible action regarding authorization of additional bond funds for JJC second floor courtroom architect fees.
This would be inclusive of the total budgeted amount for that project.
So we got 7.3 million that's currently approved, some of which includes PBA bond funds, and what you're contemplating with this agenda item is within those monies that have already been allocated, where the money is, shifting $200,000 of PBA bonds that are just in here generally over to this contract.
Exactly.
Okay. Motion to approve.
All right, so I have a motion to approve. Is there any discussion or a second?
Second.
All right, second. All right, it's been moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll go back up to item number 5 then.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded for approval of the entering contract with GH2. All those in favor say aye.
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 Item number 6, discussion possible action regarding update from owner's rep on PBA ARPA projects.
Good morning, or good afternoon officially now.
Yes.
emergency ops, first the elevators, no change, from the previous report. Emergency ops, we're gonna begin work here in the next week or two. All contracts are in place, all award amounts, subcontractors selected, notice proceed sent out. So, we're in good shape. As is my responsibility, I'll remind you of 37th Street. I don't wanna be a broken record, but it's out there. Finally, ICB remodel. We have solicitation for bids going on right now. Bid dates for the general contractor will be December 13th. Please understand, we have a contract currently with Lingo. We have 3 different funding sources. The ARPA portion can go into a GMP at any time. Engineering and the county's preference is to bundle all 3 for Lingo, meaning that we know the final amounts for the exterior, the mechanical, and the interior ARPA projects. So hopefully we will have those numbers on the 13th, be ready for you on the 18th, I believe, to approve.
Yes, that's the date. We need to get it to the BOCC.
Right, and so we should have all those numbers in. And
PBA.
worst case scenario, we will award the ARPA portion, and then the balance of the project will be funded later.
Any questions for Mr. White or comments? All right, I'll make a motion to approve the report.
Second. Bill, thank you
Thank you, Bill.
to you and your team. You guys have been working really hard on these projects. I appreciate it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item number 7, discussion from Fox Action regarding update on Investors Capital Building exterior. Keith, anything? Okay, nothing, no report. Number 8, any update on the interior portion of the project for Investors Capital Building? Keith, item number 9. I'm sorry, item number 8.
One thing, the court clerk has begun removal of all of the records in the basement over there. They're doing a great job, and I think they'll be out shortly.
Shortly,
I don't know when, but shortly.
well, do you estimate weeks, days?
I can't say. They're moving at their own pace, but I think it's the schedule will work.
Okay,
They'll get it done.
okay, thank you. I'll make a motion to receive that report.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, we've already dealt with item 9, citizens participation. Any new business comments from any of the board? No, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion
Wait, I'm
to
sorry.
get-
You gotta
Stacy?
do that again.
Huh?
You gotta close it again, same way.
Motion to get. Oh, MIZ.
ZOU.
MOUSE. All right, I'll second that
That's
motion.
what it felt like you were.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for giving me 31 minutes. 5 minutes.